Well, this is it. The live uh, Kentucky Derby full field rundown. Gio Sette and myself, John Stettin. We're going to run through the whole field. We're going to share our thoughts. We're going to take questions at the end. And we're going to try and come up with the winner of the race. I will say this couple of things. Gio and I do not handicap the same way, but as Gio's pointed out, there's about I don't know about 100 years experience between the two of us. Some big scores in the bank. That's what it's all about. Uh, we don't always agree. When we do agree, the percentage is extremely high. I would say over the past, I don't know how many years we've been doing this with Pastor Wyatt together, 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, it's
I
about
would
seven,
say,
7+ years.
without looking at the stats back over those years, I would say when we agree in the big races, we're about 90%.
Absolutely, especially at the grade 1 level. And
You know,
folks, let me just add something. Who is better than us? It's the week of the Kentucky Derby. If you guys are passionate horse players, students of the game, you know that Derby Saturday, the first Saturday in May, Breeders' Cup Saturday, it's like Christmas 3 times a year, Christmas Day and those 2 days. So John and I, we value being very prepared. We put extensive work, and like John had mentioned, collectively we have, and this is no exaggeration, 100 years of experience dissecting, handicapping, and being passionate about what we do.
all true. For a couple of people that asked, this is not our annual Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks seminar. That's on Thursday. That's something that involves the Oaks, the Derby, undercard races, a lot more. This is strictly the Kentucky Derby, going through the whole field and sharing our thoughts on each horse and the complexions of the race, and maybe even some of the intangibles. And there are always intangibles in the Kentucky Derby. Gio and I were talking about this about a week ago, and one of the things that came up that we both kind of said, it's true when you look at the history of the race, and Gio's a historian and student of the game, as am I. The Derby is very often not won by the best horse. A lot of horses win the Derby, never win again. So I think a mistake that a lot of people make is trying to, for ego purposes and for bragging rights and whatnot, they try and pick who the best horse is. Personally, I don't do that. I try and pick who I think is going to win this particular race. That might not be who I necessarily think is the best horse. I hear your voices, but no picture. Is that on my end? That's definitely on your end because we're both on the stage. So, yes.
So to John's point, John, I'm glad you brought that up. My success over decades, I've been more successful in the Triple Crown with the Preakness and the Belmont only because of what happens almost every year in the Kentucky Derby. So much is dependent on a successful break and the clean trip. There are horses drifting, backing up, consequences you have no control over. Last year, for example, I was heavily on Desong, Stephen Asmussen's Desong. I knew he'd be ready. I knew he'd be full of run. I got a robust price at 27-1. He was my top choice. He finished 4th. During the race, full of run, he couldn't reach his potential because a horse, Kingsbarn, stopped right in front of him. I'm mentioning that just as an example that you could be right in so many ways and still tear up your ticket. It's the nature of the dance. And by the way, I really, truly believe it's a rider's race. The split second decisions by the jockeys, whether it's controlling the pace, the race to the first turn, that quarter mile, in the embodiment of the race when the horses are running 37, 38 miles per hour, leading to the far turn, the top of the stretch. So much is in the ability and the decision making and the intelligence of the riders.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, because we'll get right into the race, because this is, you know, we got 22 horses to talk about. But I will say this. I agree. Riders race, definitely. A lot of luck and intangibles, like we said. But just to give one historical point, best ride I ever saw in the Kentucky Derby was a horse I bet on, and a horse that, interestingly enough, never won again, and maybe never ran again. Grindstone. I don't think I've ever seen a better ride than Jerry Bailey put on Grindstone. If you went back and watched the replay of that race, he hit every hole. He zigged, zagged, went in, went out, just went through that field like a surgeon taking out an appendix.
Yeah.
I mean, it was masterful. And a lot of people in the game today are not, you know, as familiar with Jerry Bailey as maybe you and I are, but he dominated race riding across the country, especially in big stakes, for about a decade. Focused, consummate professional, and just I remember my brother and I, whenever we would talk about him, the comment was always the same: he'll never get you beat. You know, I mean, he may not win every race, but every horse he rides, he had in the right position. But
absolutely,
I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, let's rock and roll, man.
All right, we're going to start post position order. Dornoch, Gio, your thoughts?
Okay, Dornoch. The first thought that came to my mind, and like I said, this is going deep into film study and watching every one of his races. The horse is actually a nice looking colt. He's a physical specimen in a lot of ways. Now, Danny Gargan, who I know very well in New York, he drew the one hole. With Luis Saez in the saddle, in my opinion, Dornoch, because he does have a good measure of speed, he's got the one hole. Now, something that needs to be harnessed, he may be in the gate a long time. It depends how everybody loads. But Luis Saez, in this spot, he's got no other option but to run and gun. I think Dornoch's going to get out of the gate alertly. In a perfect scenario, he'll get to the first turn, a quarter of a mile away, either on the lead or near the lead. If he doesn't, the horse is going to be greatly challenged throughout the race. Now, he is 5 for 6 in exactas, so you got to recognize that consistency. However, in my opinion, his best, most imposing race was when he graduated as a juvenile. I haven't seen anything spectacular from him. And when I don't see spectacular, I start to build reservations. So by the way, he's bred wonderfully for the race, for the Kentucky Derby, and he is a physical specimen. If Luis Saez wasn't on him, he'd be a complete toss for me. The fact that if circumstances around him and he's forwardly placed do materialize, he's not a 1,000% toss. He's deep in my handicap, but I think he could finish and hit the board in deeper gimmicks. That's where I am with Dornoch.
I don't like him. You know, I thought he was a good 2-year-old. I don't see the progression I like to see into his 3-year-old year. I was not wild about his race in the Fountain of Youth. I think he was supposed to win that race, and he did. And I don't think he beat horses of the caliber he'll face on Saturday. I didn't like his race, particularly in the Bluegrass. And if you go back to the Remsen, and I've said this all along, you know, a lot of people said how game he was coming back on the rail to beat Sierra Leone. I saw it differently than most people, though. I thought Sierra Leone was a big green horse that kind of got a little bit playful after making that big wide move and didn't really dig in. You know, he's progressed differently than Dornoch has. I said after the Remsen, I didn't think Dornoch would ever beat Sierra Leone again. Thus far, I've been right. Obviously, that could change on Saturday. But I don't like Dornoch, and not only do I not like him on the form and on his progression, I don't really like the way he gets over the racetrack personally in his races, not necessarily in the mornings. I didn't like his stride and how he looked in the Fountain of Youth. I was there that day and just didn't see it. He'd be a big surprise to me. I respect, Danny Gargan. I think it's, interesting, the relationship to Mage, back to back years like that. But I don't think he's going to be able to get it done. And from the rail, I agree. He's probably got to go and be part of what I expect to be a fast pace. Sierra Leone. I'll go first. We'll go back and forth if that's okay with you.
I'm all good, John. I'm all ears.
Sierra Leone, to me, is the Ferrari and the freight train in the race. Interestingly, there's all that talk about the one hole, and I think the last horse to win from the one hole was Ferdinand in 1986, 1987. Well, guess what? If you want to find a winner from the two hole, you got to go back further than that. So the two hole might be worse than the one hole if you pay attention to those stats. I don't. I'm not worried about that. To me, Sierra Leone checks every single box. And when he first drew the two, and we did the live show on the draw, I was a little disappointed because I thought that was not an ideal draw for him. But after sleeping on it a day or two and reflecting on it, I think as it turns out, it is a good draw. And I think that whole two-hole thing has a lot to do with the old gate. Because if you remember the old gate, okay, if you looked at the head-on, the horse on the rail, if he ran straight, he was going to hit the rail, the horse out of the one hole. So they almost always had to come out and probably bother the two, which is why the two has such a bad stat. Now we've got a couple of years without that gate. I don't think you could go by those stats anymore. I think it's a different complexion now. So, the one or the two hole doesn't bother me for the right horse. So what the two hole does, in my opinion, for Sierra Leone, it forces Tyler Gaffalione to drop back, which the horse wants to do anyway. It forces him to save ground early because he's got nowhere to go going into that first turn. He's got to sit back, let everything develop in front of him. The only decision he's going to have to make is turning for home at the half-mile pole, maybe a little bit before that is, where he wants to go. Okay? Does he want to try and take his shot inside? And at the Derby, that's not such a bad idea. We've seen a lot of horses, Street Sense, Mind That Bird, others, Rich Strike, come up the rail. Why? Because they're going 1.25 miles. They get tired. When horses get tired, they drift. So sitting on the rail and having that cool hand Luke patience might not be the worst thing to do. But Tyler's one decision is going to have to be, do I gamble and stay inside and try and go up the rail, or do I go around? This horse shown he can do both. I think the only thing that stops him, in my opinion, is a bad trip or just getting in trouble or an intangible. Somebody stops short in front of you. We know that happens. Somebody cuts you off, saws you off, sandwiches you. We know that happens. If that happens, I think he's compromised. Otherwise, I think he's absolutely the horse to beat, will absolutely be running at the end, checks every box for me.
Well said, dear John. And I agree with a good amount of what you shared. Now, my thoughts on Sierra Leone. First things first, obviously, his breeding is just phenomenal. There's no other horse that's not only demonstrated over the track, but has a $2,300,000 price tag as a yearling, son of Gunrunner, who we all know about Gunrunner's history. So he's bred on both sides to just relish at 1.25 miles, and he'll even be a bigger threat at longer distances, but perfectly bred for 1.25 miles. He's training well. He appears to be sitting on that big effort. He also has a nice work over the Churchill soil. He's already defeated many in the race. Track Phantom, Catching Freedom, Honor Marie, Resilience. However, in the slop, Gaffalione is a confident rider who I appreciate. He's going to have, this is a big stage. He's won several grade ones, but the binoculars, the attention is on him. Everybody's going to want to know where Sierra Leone is as the race unfolds. Here's my concern. Not only does he have tremendous ability, and I trust Chad that he's ready for his top effort, he will need to improve to run his best yet. His numbers are phenomenal. If he goes forward, he's a win contender. We're going to get into who I feel are other win contenders, but if he runs his best and gets a perfect trip, absolutely. I'd be ignorant to say he doesn't have a genuine shot to win. Not by open lens, but to run down whoever he needs to run down. Here's my issue. The split second decisions that Gafflin will have to make with his trip. You made good points. He may take a lane inside. Personally, I think he's going to want to swing 4 or 5 wide. He doesn't want to be 8 or 9 wide. If horses are drifting, then he needs to be decisive in his ways. He's a competitor, and if he puts him in the right position in the lane, he's going to have a couple of horses that he's targeted to run down. So an absolute win contender. He won't be my top choice, but you'd be foolish to leave him off the board and not consider him on your multi-race wagering and in your exotics. And I wouldn't fault anybody for leaning on him like John is, but there's a lot of work to be done, and I'm more compelled with another horse in the race that we're going to get into. So in my handicap, for many reasons, I have Sierra Leone as my third choice. Obviously could better the rating, capable of winning, could run second, but I have to be precise with my handicap, and I have him listed third.
Okay. Mystic Dan, your thoughts. You're up.
Okay, Mystic Dan. Interestingly enough, Ken McPeak, his daddy Golden Sense was really, really good. In the exacta 14 of 18 races. I trust BJ Hernandez, who's extremely familiar with Churchill Downs, so I trust the rider. He does have deceptive speed. A lot of people, they don't look at Mystic Dan saying, oh, he's a horse that's going to be forwardly placed. But trust me, from the 3-hole, the instructions will be to get out, make your presence felt. Around the first turn, I expect Mystic Dan to be in the mix. If that's the case, being forwardly placed from the 3-hole, first turn, a quarter mile in, saving ground. That's where it's on Hernandez, BJ Hernandez, to make a move or to be decisive as to where he lets him relax and sit when they do the main racing in the race. Now, 3 nice breezes coming into the race. His last 2, he broke from the 9-hole both times. He's got the 3-hole this time. He's got an outside chance to make his superfecta. He wasn't a complete toss for me, but he's further down in my handicap and only for bottom gimmicks. But that's it. I just wanted to tell the audience that I really feel he'll be a pace factor.
I don't like him. He's got that race in the slop if it rains. And now they're calling for a chance of rain. We thought for sure we were going to have beautiful sunshine. It's going to be 70s, 80s, warm. But then now they're saying 30-40% chance of rain, which would kind of put a damper on everything. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But I think Mystic Dan is a little over his head here. I mean, that Southwest race in the slop was okay. He's got a race over the track and a win over the track. And I do put some value on that, but I think he's a cut below some of the horses in here. I don't see him at all. Catching Freedom. Catching Freedom is a horse that's going to be on a lot of people's short list. Not mine. Tough to knock Brad Cox. Constitutions are doing very, very well. Brad wins everything. He's the golden boy of Churchill Downs. And, there's no taking that away from him right now. This horse steadily has improved, has, you know, I think the right style for the race, because I do think that despite the rash of speed and stalkers that have won the most recent Kentucky Derbies, I do think that the pace scenario in this race favors somebody coming from off the pace. Uh, but I'm not sold on him, and I think he's again a cut below some of the others. I think he'd really have to take a significant step forward to win the race.
Interesting, John. I mean, I share some of the sentiments as well. One of the add that, listen, I consider Flavien Prat elite. He's one of the best in the country in making decisions, controlling his reins, and being decisive in his ways. However, and obviously I have much appreciation for Brad Cox, the horse has a win over the Churchill Soil, which I think is essentially important. Well-bred, $575,000 as a yearling. His maiden debut is when he won over the Churchill Soil. He's got 4 quality breezes going into the race, which demonstrates that he's fit and he's prepared to run perhaps his best. Smart rider, Flavien Prat knows his position, and he's going to have to be decisive in the lane. But I do agree with you with one thing. If there was going to be a horse that was going to make an imposing move in the lane, closing powerfully, it's more likely to be Sierra Leone over Catch and Free. He's a nice colt. I expect big things from him down the road. He made my top 10 on my board. Like you folks, you'll see at the end of this whole handicap, I'm going to give you precise 1 through 20. Catch and Freedom was my 8th grade possible hit in the superfecta, deeper gimmicks with a perfect trip.
Okay. I guess that brings us to our next horse, Saffie Joseph, Catalytic.
Yep.
You're up.
All right. Catalytic, listen, I'll be rather brief with him. Nice colt, lightly raced. He's making only his second try at a distance. I have great appreciation for Jose Ortiz. I think it's an excellent rider change. He adds to his appeal. However, it's just too much to ask this guy in his 4th career start. He's got to jump significantly forward, even to be a contender in the race. Unfortunately, he defaulted to a toss. You'll see more from him down the road, but I don't even know if he's grade 1 material.
Interesting. That was my first take on him too. But the more I look, and I remember thinking about him a lot in the Florida Derby. A lot of people look at off-the-pace sprinters when they stretch out and assume that they're automatically going to run well because they're crying for more distance. And I look at it the opposite. I like speed horses stretching out much more than off-the-pace sprinters, because a lot of times off-the-pace sprinters, and I'm not so sure that Catalytic is just that yet, but he kind of had the look of that off his second start. But off-the-pace horses that go 2 turns for the first time often don't have that same kick going longer that they do going shorter. And once they have that race under the belt, they tend to improve. This is a very, very lightly raced horse. Saffie Joseph had a horrible, horrible Churchill Downs run last year where he wound up getting suspended off those 2, equine fatalities. He lost 2 horses that just, inexplicably died. And, now he's back with a big long shot, looking for a little redemption. And I don't think this horse is as easy to dismiss as most people might make him. It would be a tremendous feat for him to win the race. But we've seen a lot of lightly raced horses, Mage, Justify, others, jump up and win the Kentucky Derby in the past couple of years. Racing's changed. Used to be that you needed a lot of bottom. These horses ran a dozen times. Now, 3-4 starts, no big deal. 5 starts, no big deal. So he's got 3 starts. He's improved in each one of them. He really had no chance last time when you think about it. He chased a very slow pace for 3/4 of a mile to a much more experienced, faster horse that pulled away at the end. But let me tell you something about that race. Fierceness was supposed to pull away off of 111 and change, okay? Going a mile and an eighth at Gulfstream with nobody going with him. He was supposed to pull away. And, you know, I don't look at, you know, some people in the comments mentioned Brisnet figures and buyer figures and things like that. I don't look at that. I look at Thoroughgraph. There's a tremendous difference between the buyer number or a Brisnet number and a Thoroughgraph number. And the difference is this. The former are raw speed figures. They take into account the time of the race, okay? I could look at the fractions and tell you whether or not a race is fast. I don't need a high buyer or a high Brisnet to tell me that. I could look at the final quarter and see if he's got a good late pace number. Thoroughgraph takes into consideration ground loss, wind, weight carried, trip, all those other kind of things. So I tend to pay attention to those numbers, and my own replay watching more than buyers and brisk numbers mean absolutely nothing. Nothing to me. Those numbers, no offense meant, are for blind people. They don't mean anything to me. This horse. Well, let me finish. This horse is an improving young, lightly raced horse. I don't know that he's got enough seasoning and enough in the tank to win a race like this right now, but I definitely think that he's a 50 to 1 shot, that if he won and everybody was scratching their heads and saying they don't know what happened, I wouldn't be shocked. I really wouldn't. I'm probably not going to use him. I don't think he's going to be able to hold off the freight train coming down the lane, but I do think that he is not one to dismiss so fast. He lost a race he was supposed to lose last time, ran credible, going a mile and an eighth the first time out. I think the race looks worse on paper than it really was because of that big margin between him and Fierceness. But that was then. If Fierceness stops, that margin shrinks up like nothing in a race like the Kentucky Derby. So, you know, we'll talk about Fierceness when we get to him, but there's a lot to be said about him and that race and, you know, horses that win easy. And when we get to that, I'll share a little Bobby Frankel lesson that I learned many years ago. But I think this is a bomb that is not hopeless. So that's my thoughts on him.
I have to add to that because, and very interesting, all you shared, John. I really appreciate that. Remember, I gave this horse out in the Florida Derby. I was ice cold Fierceness over Catalytic. I like the fact that he ran as a juvenile. That means something to me. Lightly raced, but he does have a juvenile race. I don't like that it's only his second try at a distance, and this distance is 1.25 miles. I don't like that he spent his entire career and his works only in Florida. Did not work over the Churchill soil. All his races were at Gulfstream and Tampa. Jose Ortiz is a big upgrade jock. From a seasoning perspective, it's just, and believe me, you got to break down 20 horses. By default, I have to move some off the board. I just couldn't endorse this guy in this spot to run big because others are just more appealing on paper and what I saw over the track.
Okay, Just Steel. I'll take Just Steel first. I think I'm up. Just Steel is a horse that fits that old profile. Got a lot of bottom. We know Coach Wayne Lucas likes to run them and 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 keep running them. So he's got 11 starts. That there was a time where that wasn't unheard of in the Derby. Now it's a lot. So the game has changed. I personally don't like him. He's got to win over the track. He's by Justify, who's doing very, very, very well. he's kind of an in and outer to me. He shows up, doesn't show up, shows up again, doesn't show up. He's got the bottom. He's going to be sitting, I think, in a good spot if he decides to rally and decides to, bring it on Saturday. Be a nice story for Safi Joseph to get some redemption. It'd be a nice story for Wayne Lucas at this stage of his career to get some, get another Derby win and get back onto the big stage. But this is not a fairy tale. It's a horse race. I don't see this horse beating some of the other horses. I think he's outfinished down the lane, and not for me.
Okay, John. Interesting. First things first. You can't start and evaluate and speak of Just Steel without paying respect to Wayne Lucas, the coach. He's won this race several times. 88 years old. God bless him. He still has that, that spirit. He's
older than us. He's older than us.
Yeah, he's not an elderly 88. He's a very youthful 88, in my opinion. By the way, very important. I studied this horse. By far the most experienced in a race with 11 starts. I watched every one of his starts, okay? So when a horse is seasoned throughout his juvenile campaign, and he's got a number of races as a 3-year-old, you look at him and say, okay, where did he run? How did he run? He's 2 for 2 over the Churchill Down soil. All right? Both times in the money. Winning 1, running 3rd in the 2nd. $500,000 son of Triple Crown winner Justify. So you shouldn't have reservations on whether he's going to make the distance. I was very impressed how he kept to the task, ran his best number with a strong close, staying in the Arkansas Derby, second to the eventual winner, Muth, who's going to be highly regarded in the Preakness. Just Steel, where I agree with you, he's probably not good enough to win this race. He's going to need so many others to falter or to have chaotic issues. But I'm not leaving this guy off my tickets, my deeper gimmicks, because he's going to make his run in the lane. If he gets a good trip, Asmussen's a good rider. Not elite, but he's a good, confident rider. He wins a lot of races these days. The breeding's there. The experience is there. And I wouldn't be shocked if he came down a lane and he filled your superfecta. So on my list of 20 precise, I have him listed 6 in my grading. That's okay. Just cool.
Anna Marie, wise guy horse, so they say, whatever that means. You take him first.
Okay, Anna Marie. Now, originally, and this is how we evolve with our handicapping. Originally, I was very impressed with what he did in the Louisiana Derby. And my original handicap, I had him higher regarded. But we have to be decisive. And the reason why I lowered him, and I'll tell you a few of my thoughts on him first. Definitely a nice colt. His last was his best, and I believe he's improving. So the potential for a forward movement to run better than he did last is there. Okay? A horse for the course, no doubt. Proven over the soil at Churchill. You cannot argue with success. 3 for 3 in exactas, winning twice. I like to see that, all right? Because when a horse shows comfort and ability over a surface, you have to respect that, okay? He's also a well-built colt. I like horses that look physically strong. However, Ben Curtis and Whit Beckman, nice people, up to the Kentucky Derby stage. I need more robust, proven connections. Especially for a horse that needs to come off the pace. He needs a perfect trip. Yeah, I listed him as a superfecta threat, but he didn't make my top 10. Again, he needs others to falter and not run their best, and he needs to run his absolutely best. The connection scale is on the lighter end. Did I list him as a toss? Let me see. He's in my bottom 7 because I think he's got to overcome many of those factors. Even though I originally liked him, I was impressed. I just think he may regress a little from his last.
I think he's a little interesting. Again, I think I think there's a good chance that a horse wins this race. Coming from off the pace. So somebody will probably go wire to wire now that I've said that 2 or 3 times, but that's just, you got to call it the way you see it. The trainer of this horse is a former assistant to Chad Brown, and I think he's doing a very good job with the stock that he has. If there's a horse for course in the race, we talked about a horse, winning it. He's 2 for 3 at Churchill Downs with a second. So if there's a horse for course, he fits that profile as good as any. I think he's going to get some attention. He's a closer. I think if the race and pace falls apart, he's one of the ones that's going to be running late. I think he's got a good shot to get into the gimmicks. I don't think he's going to win, but I do think he's got a shot to get into the gimmicks. And he's one of the ones that if he did win, I would not be scratching my head.
I got to add one comment on that, John, because I failed to mention. And like I said, originally, this guy was right there in the mix in my original handicap. I had to dig down deep and be decisive. His work over Churchill, and because he's shown that he relishes in it. We both mentioned his success over the soil. I do not like how fast his last work was. 59-1 breezing. In my opinion, yeah, it may show an indication that he's fit. But his running style, coming off his last race, I think that was a little too fast. I would have rather seen a work 5 and a minute change, maybe even 101. 59-1 breezing, a bullet. He's going to be too short of a price. That's why I had to default. He's going to be used in some of my deeper gimmicks. He's made my original handicap, but not many.
Just a touch. I think I'm up.
I'm up.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Now, just a touch. By the way, some horses we have to study much longer than others because you see a talent, you see ability, and you see a forward, what seems to be an inevitable forward race. I checked so many boxes with this guy, right? Another son of Justified. The connections I have great respect for. Brad Cox and Florent Giroux makes good decisions. He's sound, and he rides for Brad Cox all the time. Lightly raced, but a significantly talented and bred colt. I do have reservations because I'm old school that even though it's been proven otherwise with Justified being a Triple Crown winner and Mage winning last year, more often than not, horses that do not run as a juvenile, if they're greatly talented, they're going to have nice careers, especially for what he's already proven to us. But it's only his 4th race. It's a major assignment. Okay. He did all the hard work in the bluegrass, which obviously was run down by the beast that is Sierra Leone. I believe he will have a real solid 3-year-old campaign. I expect him to be in the mix around the first turn, in the body of the race, maybe even in the mix as they turn for home, 1 through 5. However, I would just prefer him to have more seasoning because of all the consequences and the significance of the lane in the Kentucky Derby. The roar of the crowd, the horses stopping, the bumping and bruising. I love his his overall talent, where did I put him in my handicap? He made my top 10. However, because of his lack of experience, I had to default with others who are just more appealing, even though I respect his numbers on every scale. He wins his maiden. He runs great in the Gotham, and he did all the hard work in the bluegrass. But you have to be decisive. And my decisive decision was I have to lean on others, but I'm going to really focus in on just a touch when Preakness time comes around, if he's ready to run, or later on in the summer, the Haskell and all the big races at Saratoga.
I tend to agree with you there. I don't really have a lot to add. The only thing that I would add is that I think he had a um, beautiful trip, beautiful setup, uh, in the what was it in the bluegrass, and Sierra Leone handled him and ran right by him. I don't think he will have that. I think he'll have a good trip, but I think there's going to be a lot more tussling, and a lot more, people making that move at that critical point, which is going to be before Sierra Leone is really making his move. So I think Sierra Leone caught him off a beautiful trip, and I think he'll be softened up a little bit more now, even though he's got that race under his belt. Then he'll be a little bit tighter and have a little bit more gas in the tank. I think he'll be softened up a little bit more, and I don't think he's going to be good enough to get the job done on Saturday. But I do agree that he's a nice horse, has a bright future, um, and is a runner for sure. But you know, Saturday is Saturday. Okay, moving right along. Encino. Uh, of the Brad Cox horses, Encino is getting the least attention. Uh, and of the Brad Cox horses, I like him the best. Interestingly, uh, you know, he won the Lexington. The Lexington is not really a, producer of Kentucky Derby winners. It's that last shot effort to try and get into the race. Well, he did get in the race, and he's shown me a lot of diversification. He can go, he can sit, he can close. I have a feeling, I don't know this, obviously nobody does, but I have a feeling he's going to go, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if he actually winds up the pace setter, because I think he's faster early than he showed in the Lexington. Um, but I think he's a scary horse to leave out. I think he's dangerous. I think he's on the improve. I think he knows how to win. Um, I think that the horses that have been coming off the synthetic races at Turfway Park have really moved up. So I'm assuming that when those horses are hitting the main track and the turf, they're really legged up and have a lot of bottom to them. So uh, I think he's a sneaky, dangerous horse.
Interesting there, John. I got a little more to say about him, but I agree with just about everything that you shared. First things first, love the way he's training. 4 races into his career, ran as a juvenile. We trust Brad Cox, bred to win this race. His daddy, Nyquist, won the Kentucky Derby. 4 quality races, winning 3. He left the synthetic at Turfway Park, proved himself over the Keeneland Oval in the Lexington, ran a big race that day. I had him. Mr. Sette made some money. Cole has a lot of talent, a lot of speed. Godolphin Blue is very, very due. All right. So there's a sentimental feeling I have towards Godolphin because they've won so many big races, but not the Kentucky Derby. However, and this is really important, Axel Concepcion, nice kid. I don't know if anybody knows this. He's a product of Puerto Rico. He's a teenager. He's a teenager. I think he's 18 or 19 years old, tops. He's not 20 years old. So think about the stage. He's a talented rider, but he's a kid. He's a teenager. If a big-time rider was on him, I would be more confident in my handicap. But the stage is really big here. So I do expect, like you said, John, for Encino to be forwardly placed. I think he gets out, and he could very well be the lead. He's got speed to his inside with Dornoch and Mystic Dan. Those are the three that may be right there, 1, 2, and 3, around the first turn. Sure, we have Track Phantom, which we're going to get into, and Fierceness. But when I painted a picture of this race, and I do that with every race, whether it's a Kentucky Derby or a 12,005 claimer over in the winter track at Aqueduct. So, horse is talented. It's hard to dismiss him. He actually made number 5 in my handicap. That means he's an absolute use in your superfectas and or your triples. He would need a perfect storm to win this race because of the factors I shared with you. But he's talented, and I think he moves forward from his last. And I agree. I think he's the best horse coming out of the Brad Cox barn, and he is dangerous. However, on the women, I have to make a game day decision if I'm going to go 5 deep in my multiples. But I'm definitely going to use this horse in my superfectas and maybe even in a few triples.
Okay, moving right along. First of the 2 Japanese horses.
Am I going to lead with this? This is going to be rather brief. You get a kick out of this. Listen, I appreciate every connection that enters a horse in the Kentucky Derby. This guy, I took a look at him. I don't know too much about him, but I did take a look at him. I did see some film on him. He's won both of his career starts. No juvenile races, which is, again, against my principles as an old school guy. And if anybody's going to win not running as a juvenile, he's got to be rather special. Grossly overmatched in this spot. This guy will not be on any of my tickets. He's in my bottom number 20 in the field. So you now have your thoughts there, John. He's a toss for me.
Yeah, I can't get to him. You know, I did watch both his races. He might have some speed here. I don't know if he's going to be fast enough based off the races I saw to really be on the pace here. The only thing I do like about him is that his 2 starts were both at a route of ground at 1 1/8. But he's a big question mark. I don't know what he was running against, and you know, he won a race that guarantees you a berth in the Kentucky Derby, that stake in Japan. So, he's a mystery, but not enough of a mystery to get my attention, and definitely not to get any of my money.
Yeah, I agree, man.
Now, the next Japanese horse, who is probably going to be the 3rd or 4th choice in the race, maybe 5th. A lot of people like this horse. A lot of people are on this horse. Spoke about him on the Thoroughgraph show. Great pattern. Looks good in the form. Coming off those 2 strong races in the desert. I don't like him. And I'm talking about his races, not so much in the morning, because a lot of people have questioned me about that. I don't like the way his action is in his races. I don't like the way he moves in the stretch, similar to how I didn't like the way Dornoch moved in the stretch. I don't like that. I thought his race in Saudi, although it looked very good and it looked like he fought and dug in, I think he was life and death to run down, albeit wide, but life and death to run down Bookham Dano, who I don't think wants to go any further than 7 furlongs. At a mile, I think Bookham Dano becomes very vulnerable, and this horse was life and death to catch him. I think they both were gasping for air. His race in Dubai was better, very wide, looked beat, rallied again anyway. But again, I didn't like his action when he rallied. Not sure on the quality of horses that he was beating that day in the UAE Derby. Nobody's come from the UAE Derby and win here yet. That quarantine may play a role in that, but great pattern. He's got paired ones in those Saudi races on Thoroughgraph. I think that's a very strong pattern. Not the best pattern in the race, but a strong pattern. Makes a lot of sense on paper. I could see why people like him. I don't. It's very tough for me to get past, especially in a race like the Kentucky Derby, a horse who I don't like the way they move down the racetrack in the stretch. Now, Japanese are winning everything. I get it. It's going to be no surprise. I just don't think this is going to be the one they get their Derby with. And I remember a couple of years ago, we did the Breeders' Cup seminar. We do 2 big seminars a year, the Breeders' Cup and the Derby. Breeders' Cup seminar a couple of years ago, I said, these Japanese horses are going to start winning these big races pretty soon. Well, they won like 3 or 4 that year. I think it was the last time it was at Del Mar. This time at Del Mar. I didn't have one of them. So, and one of them beat me out of a huge ticket, I think, with Dunbar Road, maybe. But I don't remember. But, I said it then. They were going to start winning. They're winning all over the place. They're winning on the big stages. But I don't think their first Derby winner is Forever Young.
Awesome, John. As we're 2 seasoned guys with our eyes, in viewing him, I share some of the same sentiments and comments in regarding his physical appearance over the track, the way he moves and all. However, I just need to add a little more. I'm a big believer in recognizing a horse that has proven to have a nose for the wire. Can't get any better than 5 for 5. He's a fast horse. His numbers, Thoroughgraph, he ran back-to-back ones. However, aside from him being fast, talented, having the tenacity to get to the wire, the pageantry and the scope of the Kentucky Derby, coupled with the travel and what I saw in his work, 6 and 119 breezing, the Japanese are all different how they train their horses. I don't know anything about the rider, so you got to think about the rider entering this stage. Now, I saw some people comment, hey, Sette, the pageantry in the UA Derby in Saudi Arabia, it's big too. Yeah, it's big, but it's not Churchill Downs. It's not this massive level of attention, in my opinion. The quality of the horses surrounding him in the field, different. The quality of the riders surrounding him, different. All right? The United States of America. The best riders are either in Europe, we know all the great turf riders, or here in the U.S. Down the road, I'll make a list of them for you, but you know who they are if you're a big fan of the game. My conclusion on Forever Young. He made my handicap top 10 because I cannot dismiss his ability speed-wise and the fact that he is a horse that seemed to, make the trip. And, he's 5 for 5. However, he made my top 10. If I'm going to use him at all, it's only, and I'm only saying this because I play a lot of different ways on Derby Day. If I'm going to have a bottom gimmick, that's where I'm going to use him in the bottom end of my deepest supers. However, too short of a price, in my opinion, a major, major underlay, because the Japanese have a lot of money and a lot of people are looking at his win record. If I'm going to take a horse like this caliber under these circumstances to be deep in my exotics or to win, I need 35, 40 to 1, not 10 to 1. So I can't use him on that end.
Okay. Interesting that we're both tossing him. A lot of people like him. Track Phantom. Shoot.
You want me to lead with him? Okay. I have a lot to say about this guy. All right. So I'm glad I got the lead. And John, I definitely will appreciate your thoughts. Okay. First things first, the level of respect I have for Stephen Asmussen. Not only is he extremely well spoken, okay, he's humble in a way, even with all of his success. It's crazy that he hasn't won this race yet. He should have won with Epic Center. We know that. All right. I still can't believe that was taken from him. He had the best 3-year-old that year, and it was just a fluke that he didn't win. So high regard, respect for Asmussen. I had to cover the trainer first. Big time pedigree, $500,000 yearling purchase, son of Quality Road. A lot of respect for Joao Rosario. He's one of the strong arm guys, and I would consider him a big race performer. All right. He's come up big in many big races. Okay. New Hall of Famer. He's won a Kentucky Derby. Asmussen hasn't. Blinkers on is essentially important in this race. I'll tell you why. And it's my humble opinion, in watching his last few races as a 3-year-old, I don't think they squeezed the lemon entirely. I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why the blinkers are on. And I actually heard Asmussen say this in an interview. Track Phantom is a fast horse. We all know he's alert out of the gate. He gets to the lead, and he stays to the task at hand. I think he's made for the distance, but he's getting the blinkers because clearly, and I saw this with my eyes too, I felt the horse was distracted deep in the lane. If you watch the race in the slop in the Risen Star, it was dark out. The slop had like a glossy feeling to it. That's the race where Sierra Leone just looked monstrous in terms of how he ran down the field. But Track Phantom was distracted. And I don't think that race or his race before that was his top level race. And he ran back-to-back 94 buyers. Theoretically, the horse has never run a bad race. All right? 7 starts. He's been in the money 6 out of 7. Okay? His last, he was bet down to 2-1. He was beaten by Catching Freedom and Anna Marie. I think neither of those horses are going to finish ahead of him in this race. So I feel, because Asmussen is really gifted and he's taken all in, and they didn't squeeze the lemon, I feel he'll make the distance. Based on the speed to his inside, he's going to be forwardly placed. I don't think they're going to toast him by running and gunning and have the lead and doing a 45 and change half. I think him and Fierceness to the outside of that speed are going to be sitting with a menacing type of stalking race. And I think this horse is going to run big in the stretch. And believe it or not, folks, if he does, and Sierra Leone doesn't get the trip, because Sierra Leone's a beast, he's going to be coming. There's no doubt in my mind Sierra Leone's going to come. He's going to make his presence felt as they go down the lane. But Fierceness and Track Phantom are going to be real forwardly placed. And believe it or not, Track Phantom is a grade 2nd in my handicap. Could be 3rd if Sierra Leone gets a perfect trip or if Sierra Leone wins, but he's 2nd under Fierceness, and I'm going to get into Fierceness later on. So expect, in my opinion, a career effort from Track Phantom with the blinkers.
Interesting. I don't like him at all. I don't get to him. I don't like the fact that they're putting blinkers on for a race like the Kentucky Derby. It almost seems like a little bit of a reach, or I don't want to use the word desperate, but it seems like a little bit of a reach, to make a change like that on a speed horse in the Derby. I know Steve did say that he doesn't think he's going to be on the lead on Saturday. I unfortunately heard that, and what I try and do, especially from this point forward, I'll be a little bit scarce because I'll be getting ready for the seminar and decompressing. I don't want to hear what any trainer owner or jockey says about their horse. It's like listening to a parent talk about their kids. Kid could be on trial for killing 20 people. Oh, he was such a good boy. I don't want to hear it. Okay. Every trainer looks at their horse in the most favorable light. They envision things in the best way possible for their horse. They are almost never objective about the competition. As a bettor whose sole interest in the race is trying to make money, we can be objective about the competition because we have no vested interest. Uh, and I think that's vital. It's very difficult for trainers, owners, riders to have that objectivity. So I don't want to hear what anybody thinks about their horse. And if I did, I'd want to hear somebody say, you know what? This horse worked terrible. He was working better a month ago. I don't like the way he's going in now. I got to run him because the owners are forcing me to run because it's the Derby, but he's training horribly. And even sometimes those ones win. So I don't want to hear it. I'm going to go by what I think and what I see. Track Phantom got inhaled by Sierra Leone when he had it all his own way. Catching Freedom beat him. Anna Marie beat him. They're putting blinkers on. I think he's part of the pace. If he's not on the lead, he might not be because he's just not fast enough. I think he's one of the ones that ensure a fast pace, and I'd be very surprised if he's got a blanket of roses around him come Saturday afternoon.
All right, John, I'm going to add to that because this is somebody I saw something special in. I hear you. Listen, and I'm going to get to fierceness later on because I feel fierceness is undoubtedly the horse to beat, and I'm going to elaborate on that. But with my point here, the fact that, and I'm saying Sierra Leone gets a perfect trip, obviously a win contender, but Track Phantom has shown he's proven to be a professional racehorse. He's run 3 times over the Churchill Oval in the money all 3 times. You don't have to worry about him being forward because he will be. I just happen to think by watching the last 2 races, breaking from the extreme outside in those fields, I just think there's more in the tank. I think he's got a lot more, and I think he can run a horse down that's in front of him. I'm not saying him as a big threat to win, but he can be, if Sierra Leone doesn't get the trip, and I'm going to talk about a few others that are going to be threats to get into the exotics, but I have a picture in my mind that if Fierceness takes care of business like I feel he can, Track Phantom will have a lasting ability at a real genuine price, for the triple or the exacta.
Okay. You point taken. That's what makes a horse race. Different opinions. The interesting thing about this game, everybody, no matter how good you are, no matter how good, everybody who plays this game is going to be wrong more than they're going to be right. Fact of the game. Okay. And I always say this, horses humble everybody. So if Track Phantom wins by 5 and Saturday night I'm licking my wounds, it won't be the first time and it won't be the last time because that's just how this game is. But one of the things you got to do is trust yourself, trust your eyes, trust your gut, and just keep calling it the way you see it. And if you're good enough, and have the discipline, you can beat this game. And I did it for many years, as you know, Gio. I mean, this was all I did was play horses for a living, which is not easy to do. West Saratoga, over his head. Can't see it.
And that's all you have?
That's all I got.
Okay. Let me add a little more to that.
What more do you need?
No, I don't. I agree with you with that statement.
Too slow, over his head.
Yeah. For the fun of it, just to share with folks that I've done a little more work and I like to share some information. Absolutely overmatched in the field. However, for a fun thing, for you horses that like to bet the gray, he's the only gray in the Kentucky Derby, which is pretty cool. Second most experience to Just Steel. Having experience for a big race, it adds somewhat. He's what else did I say? Subpar connections, of course. Feel pretty good for Jesus Castanon, who runs at Tampa. And I loved his dad, Exaggerator. So, son of Exaggerator, cost $500,000 as a yearling, 8 out of 10 in the money, training well, could move forward. But you know what? There's a host of horses that are just flat out more appealing on both ends of the spectrum. Where do I have him in my handicap? 17th. So I agree with you, John.
I think you just said what I said in one page, and I said it in one sentence.
I can't help myself. I gotta get more. All right, let's move forward.
Hold on, Ashbet. Where are we? Okay, we're at Endlessly. Who's up? You or me? Who wants to take it first? Go ahead.
I'm up. Endlessly. Very, very interesting colt. Most people, if you follow the game, you know that he spent his entire racing career on the turf and on the synthetic. So it starts with that as the foundation. Real impressive looking colt. So when my eyes see physicality, I like it. I trust the barn. I think Michael McCarthy is a very underrated trainer. He's had some big races. I love Rispoli, one for the Italians. I trust the connections entirely. And the fact that they went with him to be entered in this race, it's an indication that they feel confident not to just be part of the pageantry of the Kentucky Derby. You got to believe that this horse will adapt to the surface and be in the mix. He's won 5 or 6 career starts on a synthetic and turf. I like his workout tab. I consider his workouts over the Churchill soil to be smart workouts, not too fast, consistent, reliable. I graded him as a contender in a race and a used in a good portion of your gimmicks. I wouldn't be surprised if he hit the super. I wouldn't be surprised if he hits the triple. In my opinion, the ones I mentioned, and there's others I haven't gotten to, are more appealing. But I have a lot of respect for the connections and the way this horse is training.
I like him too. First off, I'll say this. When I handicap races, I try and go in without any bias. Okay. I don't like to have any preconceived ideas, but I will, in full disclosure, say Umberto Rispoli is a very good friend of mine. Past the Wire was the first publication that interviewed him and wrote about him when he first came to the United States to ride. Good friend of mine, and in my opinion, world-class rider, great rider. Doesn't get the recognition he deserves for the talent he has. But I will say this as well. I've had some very in-depth, detailed conversations with him about races and horses over the years. The guy is so smart and so cerebral and has such a good understanding of racing and handicapping and his horse's ability and other horses' ability. And I don't pay attention to a lot of other opinions, as most of you about me know, but I love talking races with Umberto. That said, because the Derby's coming up, the only conversation I'm having with him about Endlessly is go get him, brother. You know what I mean? That's it. I want to see him win the race because he's my friend. But I do think the horse has a legitimate shot. A couple of reasons why. I think we're going to have pace, and I think that, a horse running late is going to be the winner of the Kentucky Derby this year. This horse, although ran on turf and synthetic only, he did show a lot of class. He ran in the Breeders' Cup. He ran in stakes right out of the maiden. As a matter of fact, when he broke his maiden first time out, going a mile, which is not easy to do, he's done nothing but run in stakes. The last time in that, synthetic Jeff Ruby stake, He made an explosive move. Now, a lot of people are going to worry about first time on dirt. And granted, his works on the dirt, when you watch them, don't look all that great. And a lot of so called pundits and experts said, he's not working that good on the dirt. They're not going to run him. And they were going to run him in the other race. But they decided to go here. Is that owner pressure? Is that Derby fever? I don't know. But what I do know is I trust myself. And I know historically, grass horses perform very well over the Churchill Downs dirt. I don't know why, but I know that that's a fact. Historically, grass horses do well on Churchill dirt. When they take the races off, the form still holds. They just do well over that track for some strange reason. The way the track is made up, the depth, the this, the that. Well, don't know, don't care, doesn't matter. I think he will handle the track. I think he will get the pace. I think he's a confident, talented horse. His last two races, he had a very, very nice turn of foot on that synthetic. Horses have been coming off the Turfway Park synthetic and running very well wherever they show up, at Keeneland, everywhere else. So I think this is a live long shot. And definitely, if you're looking for like horses to key and supers and triples like that, and you're looking for one that's 30, 40, 50 to 1, which is probably what this horse is going to be, there's worse moves you can make. So that's what I'll say about him.
Yeah, John, I'm just going to add one other thing because I didn't mention it and you gave me a reminder of it. Yeah. In race replay study, I was very impressed with his sort of an explosive turn of foot. It looked rather effortlessly. Endlessly is a horse that there's no doubt in my mind they're not reaching here to be part of the Kentucky Derby pageantry. All right? This horse would be odds on or 2-5 if they went for a smaller race on the turf, grade 2 or so. He's got a lot of punch in him, and he'll be used on my tickets. And in a perfect scenario, you're right. I wouldn't be shocked if Sierra Leone didn't get the trip and all the others I mentioned up front, if they didn't run their race, this horse is a potential upsetter. I hear you.
I think so. Domestic product, the other Chad. A lot of people liked his work better than Sierra Leone's. They worked together. I don't agree. I think they both worked very well. I don't necessarily think this horse worked better. My biggest positive for this horse, other than coming out of Chad's barn, and I love Chad. He's a friend too. I'm rooting for him big time. But again, I try and be unbiased. But Chad does bring a horse to the Derby as good as anybody else. He hasn't won it yet, but I mean, he brought Zandon to the Derby perfectly ready to peak. When his horses are not ready to peak, and he's got some monsters like Tuscan Gold and that Top Connor, and a couple of others in the barn that are monsters that we're probably going to see for the Preakness. When it's time to wait, he waits. So when he runs them, he knows what he's doing. This horse, interestingly enough, if you look at the fractions of his last two races, he closed into some pedestrian-like splits, and I think that we're going to get a very fast pace in the Derby. Now, is that going to be enough to get this horse home? I don't know that. I tend to think no. And I'm a little worried about him at 1.25 miles based off his pedigree. But interesting is the fact that he's brought over by Chad and that he's going to get a pace to close into when he did not have that the last two times. So that's something, if you like him, I think is worth noting. I think he's definitely not the better of the two Chad Brown horses, but he's not one that would completely shock me either because of that pace scenario. But I think these are a lot better than what he faced. The Holy Bull was Hayes. Hayes ain't all that. He won the Tampa Bay Derby. Who was behind him? Hayes again. I mean, Grand Motor first. I don't like him. So he's not really, doing it against those slow paces, against the kind of horses he's going to face on Saturday. So he's probably a pass for me. But, I do pay a little bit of attention to the fact that Chad brings him over and he gets those two, slow pace races now and gets a fast pace race. But probably not enough to get me on his bandwagon.
Great points, John. And for the most part, I agree with a good amount of what you shared. We had a talk on the side about the pace or lack of that Domestic Product had in his two prior. Both grade threes. Pedestrian is the proper word. Very slow. But when a horse has that second gear, that tenacity, the willingness, and proven to close into those slow factions, it opens my eyes to study a little deeper. Got to mention Irad. Now, we all know who Irad Ortiz is, but one thing I love about Irad, not only is he extremely humble, but he's a fierce competitor. I don't think there's anybody right now in the United States, or maybe even in the world, that is decisive with his timing when he closes with a horse. He just has this propensity to time his closings at the precise moment. How many times you see Irad running down a field on the turf, on the dirt, big races? So the pilot here, Irad, is a tremendous upgrade on this horse. However, the horse needs to be faster. But I think his last two races, the grade threes, the reason why his buyers and his thoroughbred numbers on the lower scale is because the race was so pedestrian early on. It is very difficult to have that to be full run. And I know it all too well because it cost me money, because that Tampa Bay Derby, there was a calamity on the board and I couldn't get my bet in. That's on me. I should have bet it earlier, which I did, but there was no pari-mutuel wagering. It was off the board. He won. But the way he won inside, I know in my heart that if Irad has this colt in position, and I value Chad Brown, he's a threat at a very generous price for all exotics. I think he will move forward. An upset, I wouldn't be shocked if he stole this. However, others are more appealing. He just needs to be respected because this is a rider's race. And I think he's going to be going forward, and he will have a very a moderate to fast pace in front of him. I expect the half mile to be somewhere in the area in the low to middle, max high 46s.
Okay. Grand Motor first.
Am I leading with Grand Mo?
Might as well.
All right. Grand Mo, I'll be rather brief. I like to say something good about horses because they're in the Kentucky Derby. I like this guy. He made my triple over in the Florida Derby under Fierceness and Catalytic. Mr. Sette gave that triple out, and I'm very fond of what he did for me. However, Florida connections, son of Uncle Mo, he's actually hit the board in all 6 of his starts. So a lot of promise in him. Nice looking colt. Uncle Mo is always, compelling. But the Kentucky Derby, 1.25 miles, he gives me the feeling he's a good grade 3 horse. I don't believe he's grade 1. Throw in the fact that he drew to 16, too many obstacles. I'm tossing Grand Mo the first, but he will have a decent career.
All right. I could give my thoughts on Grand Mo the first in one word less than his name. Grand Mo the first, 4 words. My comment on him is 3 words: a cut below. Next.
Consistent with what I said about being a grade 3 horse. Okay.
Okay.
You want to open up with Fierceness, or do you want me? You go ahead, because I have a lot to. No, I'm going to open up.
No. It's my turn.
All right.
Here, back and forth.
We both have the stage because I have a lot to share here.
So you're on deck. I think I'll be much briefer with Fierceness than you. So, I hope Fierceness goes off a very, very, very short price. I'm going to bet against him. Can he win? Absolutely. He had the exact opposite effect draw-wise on me as Sierra Leone. I originally thought he drew very, very well outside there. And then when I, really started dissecting the race, I said, in my opinion, his only chance to win the race, and a lot of people are going to disagree, but I think his only chance to win the race is if Johnny gets super aggressive, puts him on the lead, and tries to go wire to wire. I don't think he's going to do that. I think Johnny's going to get cute and try and sit off the speed inside of him. And there is 3 or 4 horses inside of him that have speed that he could be sitting off. So I see the race, and we try and paint that picture, like Gio likes to say, with him stalking on the outside, third, fourth, second, and hung out a little bit wide because he's got that wide post. So I don't think he's going to be able to save ground into that first turn. Now, you factor some other things in. I don't like a horse who ran off the charts in the race before the Derby. I like them to run that race in the Derby. So I like to see a forward progression. If anybody thinks that Fierceness is going to go forward off the Florida Derby, I'll salute. Good luck. I don't see it. I think he's going to regress. Can horses regress and win? Absolutely. But I don't like to bet a horse in the Kentucky Derby that I believe is on the regress. I like to bet a horse that I believe is going forward. Fierceness. Slice it and dice it any way you want. Has never put 2 good races together. He's a zigzag horse. Good, bad, good, bad. He's got a bad race coming up if he stays true to that form. Every time he's run a big effort, okay, Breeders' Cup, and I know he stalked in the Breeders' Cup. That was a different scenario, different setup, different type of field. This race is going to play out differently. So, good race, fast race, regression. Takes a lot out of his horses. He's never won a fight. He's never been able to look a horse in the eye, get tough, get gritty. He's fast and explosive when he gets things his own way, but I like a horse that's a fighter and that can win when they don't get things their own way, because in a 20-horse field, you're going to have to look some other horses in the eye unless you clear them. So I think Fierceness's race is the first 70 yards. I think if he clears, he becomes dangerous, and no cinch, because you still got that bounce regression to worry about with him. Do I want that as a favorite? No, I don't. Too many question marks for me. The other scenario that I see is when he is stalking and he goes to make that move, okay? I don't think he's going to be able to get past some of those stalkers, mid players, and speed horses as easily as he has in the past. And he's going to have to, really run to do that. So let's say he does do that. Is he going to get enough distance in between him and the pack and have enough gas in the tank, those last 3/16 of a mile or that last 1/8 of a mile, to hold off the freight train that's going to be running at him? I don't think so. And I don't want to have him at a short price. I think he's extremely vulnerable as a favorite. I think he can win. I don't think he's the best horse in the race. I think Sierra Leone is the best horse in the race on the square. And the last thing I will say about Fierceness is this, and this is the Bobby Frankel story, okay? People will say, oh, well, if you look at his Florida Derby, he ran it and did it so easy, okay? And that's true. When you watch that, you see that. But I remember years ago at Saratoga watching a race with Bobby Frankel, and a horse of his won and ran 7/8 in about one, I don't know, maybe 120 and a few, I mean, blazing fast, maybe 120, just ridiculous time. Horse win by 5, ears pricked, under wraps. Jerry Bailey, who we spoke about earlier, was on the horse. Frankel cursed. I was like, why? He's like, oh, I wasn't pointing for this race. I was pointing for the race at Keeneland. He ran too fast, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but he did it so easy. And he said something that I never forgot and made a lot of sense. He goes, listen, he goes, it doesn't matter how easy it looks to you when a horse runs fast. A horse runs fast and stops that clock in a fast time. It takes something out of them. He goes, what do you think? He was going to run 7/8 in 119 or 118 if the jockey sat him down? No, nobody runs that fast. He ran as fast as he could, and that's just science. That's mathematics. That is what it is. When a horse wins under wraps in 108 flat, playing with the field, if the jock let him run, what was he going to run? 106? No, nobody runs 106. Same principle. So I think Fierceness ran his race, one race too soon. I think that probably happened because he flopped into Holy Bull and they wanted to get his confidence back. I do like that Todd has been working him inside and outside of horses, looking a horse in the eye. But I'm hoping a lot of people bet on him. I hope he goes an underlaid favorite. Probably going to be 5-2. I'm hoping he even goes less than that at post time because he can humble me. It's happened before. I'm not afraid of that. But I think that there's too much pace for him. I don't think he gets the right setup, and I think he gets run down late by one of the closers.
All right, John. Very interesting. Always compelling, your thoughts. And now I finally get a chance to really elaborate and talk about Fierceness. So,
well, that scares me because you've elaborated on a lot of horses.
Yeah, but hey, it's my nature. I'm sure the audience can appreciate it. More is better. First things first, I want to speak of
next year. We're going to do a show for the Derby, and we're just going to get one word: toss play. Toss play. Toss.
Listen, if you love this game, you can't get enough. All right. So I tell my audience: be informed, be very informed. I want to give you a little of everything that you need to know that maybe you can't see in the form.
Well, give us Fierceness.
Fierceness. My first thought is, not only is he my top choice, I need to see spectacular. He was spectacular in his debut at Saratoga. He was spectacular at Santa Anita in the Breeders' Cup race as a juvenile. He was spectacular at the Florida Derby. In the Florida Derby, I saw no whip. I saw a horse run a 110 buyer effortlessly. Not the strongest field, but no whip, no significant urging. The horse left me feeling that he's got more in the tank. If he runs back to that number, Thoroughbred -3.5, buyer 110, it's clearly a race for second. Clearly. However, his other races that you spoke about, which created that sort of zigzag situation, I implore you, our audience, please watch those races. Now, when I watch a race, I am pausing 18 times. I'm watching every behavioral movement. We know what happened over in the Champagne. Still a 2-year-old after he blasted them in their debut. When a horse lunges, bobble at the start, it's an unnatural movement. It takes away. And that day, he had Irad Ortiz in the saddle. What Irad did during that race, and you could see this, he made a move where he passed 5 or 6 horses to his inside effortlessly. But between the lunge, him still being a juvenile, only his second race, and how aggressive Irad was, he had nothing left in the stretch. That's what I feel is a competent excuse for his second race. Okay? He come back in the fall, and he bamboozled me because looking back, I should have had him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Championship race where he just blitzed everybody. Off the pace, didn't have the lead wire to wire, confident. He took over the track really well. Remember, spectacular at Saratoga, spectacular at Santa Anita, spectacular at Gulfstream. Let's talk about the Holy Bull. I'm no liar. I remember, and this is why you have to re-handicap things and you have to readdress things to get a better view and picture of things. I had a vested interest in him in the Holy Bull. I was alive in a very large daily double. And when he was 1-5, he didn't get the job done for me. I was disappointed. And at the time, I said to myself, I'm never going to bet this horse again because I was emotional. I didn't harness my emotions because Hades will never measure up to the horse again. And what happened to him in the Holy Bull, Johnny V composed him somewhat, but he broke. We all know he was pinballed or sandwiched. Now, I was honest with you. I don't think it was too traumatic. I don't think it knocked the air out of him, but he was compromised. Johnny V realized what happened at the break, and he rushed him up. But when he rushed him up, the pace was too soft. Hades was inside. Domestic Product was outside. And here's my opinion of that race. Because they knew they had a horse with robust talent, no doubt in my mind, a second, third, fourth look at it, I don't think they squeezed the lemon. I think he had instructions that day that the Florida Derby is our main focus. If anything goes wrong and he doesn't win easy, then don't give it all you got. All right? So to me, a legitimate excuse in both of those zigzag races, the 2-year-old in the Fountain of Youth, the Champagne, and then what he did in the Holy Bull. He come back from the town hall in the Florida Derby. We all watched the race. That is spectacular. He can regress, John. That Bobby Frankel story was a great story. If he regresses and doesn't give his top race, he still could win.
I disagree.
All right, wait, hold on. But if he it depends on the level of his regression. If he regresses from that -3.5 and he runs a 1, yeah, Sierra Leone moving forward could run him down. I am not in any way dismissing Sierra Leone's ability. We talked about that. But I am saying one thing. Johnny V is arguably the most experienced and smartest rider in the race. He drew the 17 hole. Obviously, all the talk about 17 being 0 for 42, I would recommend you check the odds on all the horses that ran from the 17 hole. Johnny V realizes what he has. Rapoli's confident. Fletcher's confident. I believe he's a homebred too, right? I think he's better than Always Dreaming, who they were successful winning. I believe he's better than Forte, even though Forte was a fighter. The reason why Fierceness hasn't won a fight yet, because he hasn't been in one. When you think about it, theoretically, it's going to be very interesting if he draws clear at the 16th pole or the 8th pole, and the beast that is Sierra Leone is charging hard. It will be interesting if he's eyeballed in that capacity. But the numbers are just too definitive for me. I've seen Spectacular 3 times. The only times he wasn't spectacular, my argument is he was still young in the Champagne, and what happened in the Holy Bull was just illogical, and they simply didn't ask him all the way through, and he burnt a lot of money at 1-5. So my conclusive thing is, when I break down this race, I can't get past those 3 spectacular races and how fast he is. And if he runs back to those numbers, he wins, and he wins going away, and he's 2-5 in the Preakness. He can get beat under one circumstance, if Johnny V fails to do what he needs to do. But I trust Johnny V. I love the guy. He's very intelligent, and there's no doubt he's going to be forwardly placed in this. And as they turn for home, I don't have any reservations about him going the distance unless there is a major mishap on the track. There you got it.
Okay. That's what makes a horse race.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm sorry for our audience. I needed to go fully detailed because, believe me, at one time I shorted Fierceness because he cost me money in the Holy Bull. But I implore you to watch those races so you can understand what I'm talking about. Take notes.
Stronghold. You're up, and let's try and move
Yeah,
fast.
I'll be more succinct, but
People are,
Stronghold's an
people are
interesting.
telling us, let's go.
All right, let's go. Listen, more is better. Remember that. All
No,
right.
that's not what we're getting on the comments.
Oh, hey, listen, then we have choices to make, right? All right, 18, Stronghold. Antonio Frazou for Phil D'Amato. I feel really good for Phil D'Amato that he's in this race. Stronghold is the type of horse that Mr. Sette is a fan of because he's got that tenacity, he's got grit, he fights, he runs inside and outside. 6 for 6 in the
Everything
exact.
he does, everything fierceness doesn't do. I had to do that.
Okay,
I'm
but he's
I couldn't.
throw that in. Okay, he's a son of Ghost Zappa. I'm a big fan of Ghost Zappa. I feel good for Phil D'Amato. I believe he belongs in this race. However, the Santa Anita Derby and who he defeated that day, he beat Bob Baffert's horse to the wire. I think Antonio Frazou is up and coming. I trust him. But this post at the 18 post, he's won over the track, 1-for-1 at Churchill. It's a big ask, the fact that he simply needs to run faster. And I just think from the 18 hole, even though he's got that fighting ability, I just think it's a tough task to get positioned properly in this field with so much other speed in the race. So where did I have him in my handicap? He'll have a nice career. Oh, and I had to mention 6 races, 6 different tracks, and he ran well every time. So he's a nice colt, nice racehorse. But just going to go to that, and I'm going to leave it to you, John. Here's my point. What did he make in my total order here? Where is he? 12. So capable, bottom supers at best.
Wow, we got a very big difference of opinion here, but I'm going to test your memory a little bit. We had a conversation the morning of the Santa Anita Derby.
Okay.
You loved Imagination.
Yes, I did.
I told you early in the morning I was having a very hard time with the pace of that race. And then I called you back later and I said, you know what? I figured it out. Stronghold is not going to lose. You loved Imagination. Do you remember why I told you I settled on Stronghold and told you I was going to bet him and single?
Not entirely, but I remember you said that with confidence. And by the way, it was just a big head off. Go ahead.
What? Okay. I was really trying to come up with the winner of that race. So I went back and I watched his workouts. And I watched a lot of his workouts. And he went from a horse working in front of horses and working by himself to working behind horses and moving outside and passing them. And the first time he did it, Freysu had to really ask him, really, do it because Freysu was working him. Second time he did it a lot easier. Third time he did it like he was meant to do it and inhaled them. And I said, they're teaching this horse to learn to run off the pace. They know he's got speed. They run the race. He's dead game. He runs down Frankie. I think that was the day Frankie won like 6 races. He was on fire. He couldn't do nothing wrong, okay? Antonio, okay, another Cougine, got him, and nailed him. They interviewed him after the race, okay? And Antonio is another guy we've had on the show. We've had Frankie on the show. Great interviews with these guys. If you go on our channel to our one-on-one interviews, great stuff with these guys. But anyway, Antonio said he was very confident going into the race because they started working him behind horses, teaching him to pass horses. And, he did it okay the first time, a lot better the second time. And then, last time he did it, he knew he was sitting on a rocket. And I'm like, wow, same thing. All the dots connected for me. I think this horse is an overlooked major player. And I think he's going to be sitting in the right spot, okay, off the speed. I think he's going to get the jump on a lot of the closes, the deep closes, and I don't think he's one that is going to surrender very easily if he gets that jump and gets that trip and gets that, head start on the deep closes. I don't think he's going to surrender like some of these other speed horses may be. I like Stronghold. I think he's a serious player. I think he's going to be overlooked. I think Fresu is a great rider. Love the guy. Super nice guy. Super talented in the saddle. When we had him on the show, we spoke about the possibility of him, his first year in the States, getting a mount in the Derby, and here he is. Unfortunately for him and for the connections of Stronghold, they're going to have a freight train locomotive to deal with. But other than that, this horse is dangerous.
Okay, John, I just want to add one other thing. I promise I won't go long on this. Like I said,
that's not possible, but go ahead.
I spoke very highly of Phil D'Amato, another Italian boy with Antonio Fresu.
Listen, this should be the Italian Derby.
Yeah.
Frankie, Fresu, Rispoli, D'Amato.
It's a beautiful thing.
Caffleone.
Listen, we're known
for
more than just Sunday sauce.
They should put a red, white, and green bouquet of roses on the winner of the Derby this year.
I have to make one other point. Stronghold. Like I said, I love a fighter. I love tenacity. I like a horse that's willing to run inside and out and to go through a lane. However, I don't know if you realize this. He's never run in a field greater than 8. 2 of his races, he had a field of 4 and 5. For the most part, he's been in California. He does have the race over the track. I just think the 18 post and the pageantry of the Kentucky Derby and the fact that he has to run faster than he ever has before, those are concerns of mine. I like him as a colt, and I can appreciate everything that you shared. And because you're saying he's really dangerous, and I value your opinion, I'm probably going to be compelled to use him in some of my superfectas. But I dropped him down in my handicap because of those other factors I just mentioned.
Resilience. You want to go? Who's up? I don't even know.
I'm going to start Resilience, and then you'll follow. All right?
Shoot.
Resilience. Jockey changed to Junior Alvarado. Love what he did in the wood. He made my exactor over Society Man that I gave out. Nice horse, but he had a perfect trip. Another horse that needs to run faster. He was 4th in the Risen Star to Sierra Leone, Track Phantom. The 19 post is a challenge here. If you think about a horse that needs his career best, what a point I made here. All right. He's got 2 races over the Churchill soil. I like that. I like for a horse that's been on the ground and who ran successfully over the track. So he didn't win, but he hit the board in both his races at Churchill. Bill Mott, probably I'm one of the few guys that has more respect for Mott over most people. Love the guy, love him as a horseman. I feel like he'll be prepared for the race. The 19 hole is really detrimental to his chances. I just think he gets better days down the road, and too many others have more appeal for him to jump really forward and for others to regress. So I can't use Resilience.
I agree. I see him as an improving kind of horse. I like his style. I like where he's going to be position-wise, the way I do the pace scenario. But I don't think he's going to be. I don't think he's as good as some of the others that we've talked about. I got him like as a second tier to these horses at this point in his career. Anyway, now the next horse is a little interesting because for those of you that don't know, I do know because you could see Gio's personality. So not only did I see it firsthand, but he reminded me of it 746 times. He's about to remind me 747 times that he picked Society Man to be in the money in the Wood Memorial at 106 to 1. Okay. Not many people pick a horse at 106 to 1. Gio did in the Wood Memorial. And I think I got 17 text messages about 3 minutes after the race, all from Gio asking me if I saw it, as if I might not have seen the Wood Memorial. But he was super excited. He hit the exacta, I think he hit everything. I don't remember, but he had Society Man at 106-1. I don't like him in the Derby. Even with Frankie, who can work miracles, has never won a Derby. I think Frankie's only ridden in one other Derby. I'm not sure, maybe two, maybe not even, but I think he's ridden in one. We know he wants to win it really bad. Personally, I think the move for Frankie, and if you think riders don't make wrong moves, remember, Bill Shoemaker, he had the choice to ride Hill Rise and Northern Dancer. No brainer. I'm riding Hill Rise. We all know who won. Northern Dancer. I think Frankie should have held out and wound up on Encino for Godolphin, his old powerhouse stable, and had a much better shot if he could have got that mount. They weren't sure they were going to go in, so I guess he grabbed this horse when he could, and he wanted to ride in the Derby, so he did it. But I think he should have held out for Encino. But I don't like Society Man, especially from the apron where he's going to have to be. Even with Frankie, even with Gio liking him at 106-1, he's a toss for me.
Okay, John, Frankie Dettori, one of us Goombas, world-class rider. You can't even measure the upgrade at jockey, going from, all due respect to Mr. Rivera, to get Frankie to ride this horse. By the way, the only gelding in the race for you racing fans, interestingly enough, everybody else got their stone still. He's a gelding. But based on his effort in the Wood Memorial, the reason why I liked him then is that he's showing the type of improvement. And my trained eyes, I kind of liked what I saw leading into the Wood Memorial. The odds didn't bother me. I felt like he was going to move forward. Now, he moved so much forward, the likeliness of a bounce or a regression is there. However, Frankie Dettori is who he is. There's going to be a rapid pace. Eventually, this horse is going to show what he's made out of. I didn't toss him. If there's going to be a horse with others, there's 5 or 6 horses that can have a perfect trip and a good run in the stretch. He could fill your exacta. He made my grade somewhere in the 13 or 14 range. But you know what? Frankie's the wild card. And if he gets a lane and others fail, or other horses are blocked in a lane, horses shifting, calamities all over the place that can happen in the Kentucky Derby, it wouldn't be a shock to me if he made the makings of what could be a ridiculously robust superfecta.
Okay. Got 2 alsos. I'll sum them up this way. I don't think if either one gets in, they got a chance. I don't think either one of them is named Rich Strike. And if they get in, I just hope they don't get in, because one of the horses I like is out.
Okay, I'm going to be very brief and succinct with that too. The 2 alsos, Mugatu, if he gets in, will not just a total toss. However, if there is a vet scratch or if somebody else comes out, Epic Ride, if he gets in, he's a reliable, consistent colt, son of Blaine, and he will be a pace factor. So I hope the original field is what we see. But if Epic Ride somehow gets in and is a late scratch, consider him at 21 to be one of the horses that may contribute to the pace. I don't want to see it, because then he'll have a horse from Fierce's outside that's going to be, solid out of the gate. So I'm hoping he doesn't make it, but that he could be interfering with the race. I don't like him, but he'll be a pace factor if Epic Ride does get in.
Okay. There you have a wrap. Okay. Went through every horse, gave all our thoughts. Gio is all over fierceness. I like Sierra Leone. For me, there's 3 horses I'll really be focused on. If I was alive in the pick 6 and I decided not to single Sierra Leone, which I very well may, and I made my living playing pick 6s for years. I don't play them now except 2 days a year. Play them on Derby Day, play them on Breeders' Cup Day. That's it. But if I was alive and I would have 3 horses. I would either have Sierra Leone as a single, but if I had more, I would have 3. I would have him, Stronghold, and Endlessly. That's it.
Well, that's a good closing comment. I'm going to be decisive with my wagers. I'm not getting past Fierceness. What I spoke about Track Phantom is I'm going to see an extremely overlaid price. I love overlays, as most of you should. Is it a reach to think that he'll finish ahead of Sierra Leone? Somewhat. But remember, the obstacles that Sierra Leone may be facing. Zigzagging horses that are stopping in front of him. I was victimized last year with that. It could happen. Plus, Tyler Gaffleone's got a big focus in this race. There's a few horses, if you watch this and take notes, who I'm going to use in my exactas, who I'm going to use in my multiples, and who I'm going to definitely use in my trifectas. The supers, there's 7 or 8 horses that could fill your super. You listen to all the thoughts. But that's where I ended up. And I'm going to stay stringent. In the comments to this, when I get my second cup of coffee after a post, I'm going to list precise order of my grade, 1 through 20, just for you find people to absorb again. But watch this over and take notes. Take notes, because you got 100 years of experience between John and myself.
Wait. There's a very important message scrolling on the bottom of the screen. What does it say?
Where's that? Oh, there's only one freight train in the race. And you're right. Listen, Sierra Leone.
How many times in the Kentucky Derby can you say there's only one freight train in the race?
Listen, go back to my comments on him. For every reason, he's a massive contender. He'll need a perfect trip. The only horse that could win by open lengths is Fierceness, because I've seen Spectacular 3 times. And I can't get past that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Now, we got some time for some questions. Anybody's got questions? I know we got a zillion comments, and we would have to go back to the very beginning to read all the questions. I don't know if we may have answered some of them during the show. So if anybody has any questions, now we've got some time. So I hate to make people, repeat them, but it's either that or we go back to the beginning and we'll be here another hour. So, Gio, there's a question for you.
Okay.
Can you see them or no?
Yeah, I do see him. Who do I feel is my best surprise long shot in the race? There's a couple.
No, he said best. Stay succinct. Be decisive.
Yeah, it's endlessly. It's endlessly. I was going to say between Endlessly and Encino, because of the connections and all their performance leading into the race.
Okay, I use Formulator for those that want to know.
Zook says he missed my top picks. Zook Bass, go into the comments and you'll see.
Top picks is the all button.
It's not at all.
Greatness 3 times and crap 2.
Again, Liberty Bibbity, crap 2. I implore you to watch those 2 races, all right? Because sometimes not only do horses humble us, but there's reason for it. And you have to harness yourself and take a good look at it, No,
Thoroughgraph does not have anything to do with Formulator. 2 different things. I use both. You asked about past performances. Thoroughgraph is not past performances. John, would you ever do a video explaining what you don't like when watching horses run over the track? Yes, I will do that. Absolutely.
Hey, Gary, talking about structuring the superfecta ticket. Sometimes you can't be gun shy. I like to put 1 ticket in with my precise dead-on superfecta. Because if I nail it, I get paid a lot of money. However, if I'm very decisive on my winner, I'm going to make a ticket keying my winner over my next 4 or 5 best and make it for a full dollar and play it multiple times. So if we get a scenario where there's a fast closing big number and there's quite a few in the field that I like, then you're going to get paid handsomely for that.
Okay.
More questions.
Well, I want to weigh in on something for a second, but yes, I did a Thorograph show. I did a Thorograph show this year, Alejandro. It's on the channel. This is more stuff that I go into on the seminar, but I will be brief and let you know. I play superfectas a little differently than most people. Okay, I play exactas differently. I never box. Boxing is for Christmas presents. Okay. Can't win boxing horses with takeout, with everything else. Can't win. I never reverse exactas. If I like the 5 and I think the 8 and 9 can run second, I bet 5-8, 5-9. I don't reverse them. I don't box them. If it comes 8-5, I lose. I double up. I don't hedge. Okay. When I win, I want to get paid. When I'm right, I want to make it count. Superfectas. Here's how I play them. Let's say, for argument sake, I like number 1. Okay. Let's say I think the likely horses to run second are 4 and 5. I'll take 1 with 4-5 with all. Okay. So what am I doing? I'm turning a superfecta into an exacta. 1 with 4-5. I got all in the 3rd and 4th slots. So if I hit the exacta, I automatically hit the triple and the superfecta. And I think it's a very, very good way to play. That's how you catch 60 and 80 to 1 shots. And if you're not using the favorite in those first 2 slots, you're off to the races. Okay. That's number 1. Number 2, I believe after 50 years of playing this game and playing for a living that nobody, Harry Houdini, could not handicap for 3rd and 4th. You want to know why? Because for 3rd and 4th, you got guys easing up. You got guys not trying once they know they can't win. You got 1,000,001 different things. They say there's 1,000,000 ways to lose a race, 1 way to win. There's 1,000 ways to blow 3rd and 4th every which way but Sunday. So I don't think you can handicap for that. I don't want to handicap for that. All. That's how you catch that horse that you would never, ever come up with in the 3rd and 4th slot. And I've hit some major superfectas that way.
John, I hear what you're saying. And John, it's a very competent point. But I'm saying, for the thrill and the pageantry of the race, if I put 96 hours of handicapping in, if I come up, obviously it's a smart way of playing, but I'm still going to cover my precise super, my precise triple, and my best exacta. Then I'm going to consider about the multiples underneath. I strongly say your superfecta key with your top horse with 4, 5, or 6 under, because in that mix, you're right. Within a head, a half a length, all those zigzagging, the things that can happen in the Kentucky Derby, you got to have that covered. But don't be precise with your top 4 and not have that ticket. That's how you make some nice clams.
I don't box.
For $5, John, not box. I'm talking about for $5.
Oh, play a straight superfecta? Yeah, I'd never argue against playing a straight superfecta.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
cover that and then do your multiple underneath.
Well, for me, I couldn't do that, and I'll tell you why. I don't handicap the way you do. Like, I don't handicap for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I pick the horses I think can win and the horses I think can run 2nd. 3rd and 4th, I got no idea.
I know, but I'm a mental case when I want to be precise in terms of my overall handicap. That's why I list them 1 through 20. Because I have to grudgingly give way to some, and some I got to say, you know what, if it happens, I'm going to get paid.
Harry Hampton, I apologize. If it's a wet track, we just wasted over an hour of your time. We got to restart, do everything all over again. It all goes out the window. It's one of the reasons I hate Saratoga. You spend all night handicapping. You're ready to go. The weather said sunshine. You get up in the morning, and it's pouring, and the track is sloppy, and they're off the turf. So
one of the things I may add, I think
it rains.
I'm not going to handicap the gals, the Oaks, but I will say because I'm not going to be a part of John's seminar. I'm going to be I'm going to be in the audience just watching, absorbing everything he has to say, because I want to promote the seminar at Past the Wire. But in the Oaks, I land on 2 horses. I'm playing a massive exacta, and I'm using both in my doubles with the Oaks and the Derby. I'm on Torpedo Anna and Tarifa. And if I get beat, I get beat. But I make those 2 horses with only 2 other horses underneath, using Ways and Beans and just FYI. So keep that in mind with the gals.
If you want to join the seminar, okay, there's some spots left. It will sell out before the Derby, guaranteed. Pastthewire.com. It's right there at the top. You click on there. You can make a reservation. We're going to cover the Oaks. We're going to cover the Derby. We're going to cover plays against, ticket structure. A lot goes into it. It'll be live, Q&A at the end. And if you missed the live version, you do get a link to the replay. So if you want to join the seminar, we're going to cover like 4 or 5 of the undercard races leading to the Derby, the Oaks, depending on how many races we could cover, but we'll cover all of that. And I hope to see a lot of you there. A lot of you already have reservations. I know we're getting close to full. We're not full yet though, but we'll get there. And I think that's it. Top 5 tosses. Everybody but everybody but the 3 I'm using, which I already said. Everybody else I toss.
Hey, by the way, guys, if you're going to be
tossing 17 horses, Fierceness is one of them. I know the chances of rain. The chances of rain are 50%. Everybody was talking all week how it was going to be gorgeous, 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 and now all of a sudden it's taking a turn. And really, as a handicapper who plays, this game seriously, that's a major obstacle. It really is. It really prevents you from really locking in, to horses before you know the weather. Are you guys willing to tell us how much each of you are willing to invest in this race? I am. I'll usually bet. I mean, it varies from year to year, Mario, but I'll bet on Derby Day, in the vicinity of $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 on that day. But some days it's different, and I'll tell you, Mario. A couple of years ago, I didn't bet a lot of money. Okay, well, it could be for some. Everything is relative, but I wait to bet the most on these days. But I invested, Mario, $1,000 in the pick 5 and the pick 6. I singled, I believe, Digital Age in the turf race. That was my single at 7-1 with Javier Castellano. I was alive in the pick 5 and the pick 6 going into the Kentucky Derby with 2 horses. One of them was Sol Volante, who was a big price. On $1,000 investment, if Sol Volante wins that race, it's $1.1 million to me on $1,000 investment. A lot of people can't do that. You put yourself in that position enough times, eventually you'll click. The other horse I was alive with was Honor AP, who I think ran 3rd. I was alive with him for $550,000. On $1,000 investment, I was alive for $550,000 and $1 million. Okay. I didn't close the deal. And it was an unfortunate thing because going into the race, I felt live. And Sol Volante was a turf horse. But what did I say earlier about Endlessly? Turf horses run good on the Churchill dirt. So I used them. Honor AP I liked. He was my top choice. A lot of people say he could have won. He ran the furthest and most ground according to Trackers, but he didn't win. But the sad part about that is I was so confident I was going to win one of those races, one of those horses going in. And Mario, out of the gate, Sol Volante was last. Honor AP was like 18th out of 20. They were both so far back going into the first turn. I said, you know what? It ain't going to happen. But I didn't cry because if you put yourself in position, you will close the deal. And that's that. So hold on. I'm just...
Wait, I want to answer Mario's question too.
Go ahead.
How I approach the race. And by the way, there's 2 things. I don't have the significance of John's following on Twitter or his capital to wager. However,
that's because you're not a bank robber.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. And Mario, one for the Italians, guys at each. I'm a big believer, okay? I'm a big believer in low risk, high reward wagering. Do I take my big shots to win exactas and triples straight? I won't hesitate to play a $40 exacta, a $40 triple straight, or somewhere in the category of $100, $200 exacta call. I have my limitations because I don't have John's capital. I get aggressive when my opinion is stronger. The history of my handicapping, I've had many, many, many scores. I am more confident in races like the Preakness and the Belmont Stakes because it's a smaller field and I don't have to worry about those other compensating factors and things that happen over the track. But doubles, pick threes, exactas, win bets, I'm limited to protect the innocent. I can't describe exactly what I play, but if you go to my Twitter page, because I'm trying to increase my following there, you'll see how I bet, but I never disclose everything I play because some things I got to keep to myself to protect the innocent. Gabish?
Tommy, no, I didn't get a chance to get with Tommy. I spoke to him the other day, but no, we didn't get a chance to do a show. Like I said, this time, after this show with Gio, I'm going to kind of shut down. I've still got some, seminar work to prep on some of these undercard card races, but I'm going to do that and then just shut down and kind of decompress a little bit from all the work that we've been doing. Block out all the noise, so you may not see much of me anywhere. Phone off, do not disturb. Just game face time. You don't want to bring a knife to a gunfight. So I like to get ready, and part of that is just filtering out all the noise because there's going to be a lot of noise over the next week. You're going to hear everything about everything. Who took a bath? Who went to the bathroom? Who took a step this way? Who took a step that way? Who was looking left? Who was looking right? None of that means a thing. None of it. And the best takeaway I could give you is trainers, they're all going to love their horse. Nobody's going to say, you know what? The owner's making me run. I really don't want to go in this race, but it's the Derby and the owner's forcing me to run. They already bought their plane tickets. They got box seats. They spent a fortune, but the horse is not really doing so good. They are never going to tell you that. So don't listen. My horse is doing great. Of course he is. He's in the Kentucky Derby. If he wasn't doing great, he wouldn't be here. So block out the noise.
I got a final thought, okay, if you don't mind. First things first, guys, we appreciate you as an audience. So if you're informed, if you're very informed by listening to us, if you took something out of it, hit the like button, subscribe to us because we're growing at a rapid pace. What John does in a seminar is very, very special. If you're not on board yet, I would listen to the man because he's going to cover the undercard. He's going to go over the Oaks in great detail. It's invaluable information. And sometimes you have to subscribe and sometimes you have to put up some shekels to listen to it. It's a good platform. But we appreciate your viewership. I'm going to be back for the Preakness and the Belmont, 2 races I have a significant amount of success in. And I really wish you all the very best of luck in the Kentucky Derby. And I appreciate your viewership. And when you read my columns, your readership as well.
Hang on 1 second. I'm going to put a link to the seminar.
Yeah.
For those who want it. All the information on the seminar is right there for anybody that wants to join. I think it's right there. Yeah, there it is. It's in the comments for anybody who wants it. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Grazie. Thank you. We really appreciate everybody tuning in. We took a lot of your time, but hopefully we had a little bit of fun. Again, this is the Italian Kentucky Derby. A lot of Italian connections. And like I said, who don't want to be Italian? The best food, the best sunglasses, the best cars, the best handicappers. I mean, what do you want? The best lovers, the best fighters, you name it.
And we're passionate about it too.
The most passion. And let me tell you something else. If you're a fan of Hollywood, start watching Italian movies, and you know, you may have to use the subtitles. Forget about it. The cinematography, the passion in the actors, the storylines. Forget you'll think Hollywood's garbage, second rate. Okay, you think people talk about The Sopranos. Okay, great show, loved it. Okay, you like The Sopranos? Get Cinemax. Watch Gomorrah. All right, watch Gomorrah 10 times. Make Soprano look like choir boys, man. Forget about it.
And what about Bronx Tale? We all love Eddie Mush. We've all had Eddie Mushes in our life.
Absolutely. You know? Some people don't understand. The best Eddie Mush I knew was a guy named, I hate to say his name because it's disrespectful. He might be alive, but used to be at Aqueduct, couldn't win. We used to joke that they had a machine at the turnstile at Aqueduct when you left, that if this guy had any money, the thing would lock and nobody could get out because he still had money in his pocket. He would lose everything. I remember Disco Count. You remember Disco Count, Gio?
I do remember him. Absolutely.
Okay. Disco Count was a mud freak. This is when they used to put the X in the form when they were mudders, okay? And they loved the slop. This horse one day comes off the turf at Belmont. There's 4 horses in the race. Victor Molina, who most of you will not remember, was on this horse, okay? 4-horse field. Sidney Waters' horse, Disco Count, never lost a race in the slop. Mile and an eighth, Belmont, 1 turn, long around that chute. Slop, pouring rain, sitting second, third on the outside, opens up 10 lengths for turning for home on the turn. 10, maybe 12. We're all watching outside. This guy, who I'm not going to mention his name, starts screaming, I got this one. This is me, oh me. I finally got it. He turned and started running at the 8th pole from where he was watching on the 3rd floor in the clubhouse overlooking the track. You know the spot if you've ever been to Belmont. Turns around, starts running towards the window and looking at the TV. You heard him, oh no. Sure enough, somebody come out of the clouds, nailed Disco Count. I think he was a gelding, ran till he was 8 or 9. Only race he ever lost in the slop was that day.
Yeah, listen, I one more story on that. That's great, John. Great stuff. I don't like being mushed. When I'm at the racetrack and somebody tries to offer who they like and is sitting with the program that usually your girlfriend buys to look at the colors, you know, I don't want to listen to a guy like that. I don't want him on my horse because I put a ridiculous amount of time into my handicap, and I respect all handicappers. But when someone's just playing colors, numbers, names, I get mushed. I don't like it.
Last thing, notable speech, who I mentioned on our Kentucky Derby radar show early in the year, who I thought could be a contender for the Kentucky Derby for Godolphin off one race. Okay, nobody ever even heard of the horse. Okay, they didn't go that route. I really thought that they were going to go for the Kentucky Derby with this horse. I think he's special. He's running on Saturday in the Guineas over in across the Atlantic, and he's running against City of Troy, who's a Coolmore monster that's 1-9, and that Aidan O'Brien already said he may bring over here for the Travers, and if he does, look out. So he's running against a monster. Okay, so most of you know who City of Troy is. I follow the European races pretty good. But notable speech, I think, is one of the better Godolphin horses I've seen in a long time, and I really wish that they went the route to try and get into the Derby. I thought they were going to run in the Dubai race, the UAE Derby, and come here with this horse. I know it was talked about and on the table. They decided to keep him on the grass. They obviously know what they're doing. But notable speech, if you're up early Saturday morning, before you watch the Derby, watch the Guineas, 2 special horses, City of Troy, but watch this notable speech. This is a racehorse and a half.
Great point, John. I echo it. Great point.
Top post, everybody. Grazie. Thank you. All good.
God bless everybody. God bless your families. Who's better than us? Christmas is Saturday. One of the 3 Christmas days we have, the Kentucky Derby.
If I don't see you at the seminar, I will see you soon. Ciao for now.
Let's go.